Nous avons la grande opportunité, chance d'accueillir Kathleen Haas. Je ne sais pas si certains d'entre vous qui ont regardé un peu tous les ouvrages qui existaient dans le domaine de la business analysis ont identifié les ouvrages de Kathleen Haas. Kathleen Haas a écrit 6 petits livrets qui détaillent toutes les parties de la business analysis. C'est The Essential of Business Analysis. Et elle a aussi écrit des ouvrages, voilà, ce sont les petits livrets ici que vous voyez en haut, à droite. Et c'est d'autres ouvrages qui a été primé, en l'occurrence le Managing Complex Project, qui a été primé en 2009 par le PMI. That's right. Et nous avons traduit en français ces ouvrages. Pour l'instant, nous en avons traduit que 3 encore sur 6. Et dans ces ouvrages, vous avez, ce qui va être intéressant, c'est ici, vous avez ce que n'a pas le BABOC, c'est un exemple d'introduction de la BA dans le Project Lifecycle, donc avec toutes les étapes que doit suivre le BA. Dans l'analyse stratégie, vous avez tout avec des exemples de business model et de business case et de feasibility study. Donc tout ça, c'est là-dedans. Et pour le dernier, vous avez aussi des exemples de BRD, c'est-à-dire Business Requirement Documentation.
To see you all. Well, first of all, I'd just like to say it is my pleasure to be with you in Switzerland, in Geneva. Never been here before. We took a boat ride on your lake yesterday, and I've never been on a boat before where one country was over here and another. I was in 2 countries at one time, I think. So it was just such a pleasure and so beautiful. Okay, I have a lot of information for you. No one has ever accused me of being brief, so I'm going to jump right in. If you have a question or a comment during it, please do raise your hand, and we'd love to hear from you. So here's what we're going to talk about today. First of all, I kind of want you to lean back, take a deep breath, and let's look at the big picture of what the world is like that we are trying to be successful in for ourselves, our own careers and our families, but also for the organizations that we work with. Then we'll look at a new leadership model for projects, and then we'll talk about managing complexity. The whole presentation is surrounded by the concept of the complex world we now live in. So this is intended just to begin to set the stage. I don't have to really tell you guys this. You operate in this global, interconnected, hyper-connected world where things are changing so rapidly that we must be able to react to change, leverage change, use it for our advantage. It has to do with the integrated economy. It has to do with the explosion of information and information technology, the convergence of digital, social, and mobile spheres. The internet has changed the way we work, the way we play, the way we communicate. It has made it, technology has made it so my grandchildren can do a whole lot more things on my phone than I can. I don't even know why my phone is able to do so many things, but they think it should. We're also about business value creation when we're involved in change initiatives. It's not okay to just manage a project without the business value and customer value taken into account and assured. The call to action today in the 21st century is innovate or evaporate. So companies not only need to change as the world around them is changing and the competition is changing, but they need to innovate at the same time. And it is up to business analysts to not only define requirements for a new business solution, but to ensure that the new solution is going to innovate and going to bring about value to the customer and wealth to the bottom line. And we achieve all this through projects, and project performance is still very elusive. We are not where we need to be, especially with projects with a heavy IT component, information technology component, software and hardware. So all this results in immense complexity. And we don't talk about complexity in the business world very much. We don't talk about complexity as it has to do with managing our projects. And what I hope to leave you with is the understanding that because we are in a complex world, we can't do our projects the way we typically have. We just aren't able to be as successful as we need to be. So when you're involved in business projects, you're faced with complexity at every turn. Our business processes are most often complex, often not defined or ill-defined and out of date because once they were defined, we didn't have the resources, the tools to keep the processes up to date as things change. And the world is changing constantly, so therefore change causes great pressure on our projects. Your companies are experiencing huge competitive pressures to be first to market, to be the most innovative. And all through the business literature, experts are warning us if we don't innovate, our company is not going to remain competitive, no matter what industry you're in, whether it's healthcare or technology or financial services or whatever your industry. It's about innovation. Our business organizations and structures are very complex. Sometimes we have teams of teams all over the globe that we're working with. And then our projects are way more complex than we know and then we are able to manage using traditional methods. Another data point that I want you to think about before we launch into the change that I think we need to make. You may have come across IBM's annual CEO study. This one is from 2010. 1,500 CEOs around the world were interviewed face-to-face, and here's what they said. Complexity is their biggest challenge. Prior to 2010, the response to this survey, this very same survey, was that managing change was their biggest challenge. Now, at the CEO level, there's a realization that managing complexity is their biggest challenge. They don't think they're equipped. Their organization is skilled and competent to manage complexity. They went on to say creativity is the most important skill in order to manage complexity, because complexity means everything's always changing and we have to adapt, and that's what brings about creativity. And then they said they don't have the creative talent that they need in order to manage the complexity that is all around us in the world today. And so I'd like us all to raise our hands and say, we, business analysts, are primed and positioned to be the competitive leaders that are needed in organizations. We work with people up and down and across all pieces of the organization. So we need to not just define requirements, not just ask people what they need and write it down. We need to foster creativity and innovation so that our new business solutions improve the competitive position of our organizations. So what does this all mean for you guys? First of all, traditional jobs are going away. Anything that can be commoditized, that is anything that is well understood and can easily be an activity that can easily be executed either by tools, by automation, or by contractors. So traditional BA tasks are being commoditized, as are traditional PM tasks. And the BA is being asked now and in the future to focus differently, not just requirements management, although that's important once you're in a project, but much higher level thinking, focusing on strategy, execution, focusing on innovation, and focusing on value brought to your customers and your organizations through your project efforts. And PMs need to focus on complexity management as opposed to project management. And it's two very different ways of doing things. And another thing, companies can't find the people that they need. They need critical thinkers. They need people who can adapt, invent, experiment, who are willing to try a bunch of new things. Failure doesn't mean you failed. If it doesn't work, it just means you now know that a particular approach is not the one that's going to work for you. So you've gained information, and you need to feed that back into your next experiment. We need to collaborate in order to bring about the synergies of individuals with different expertise. And it's about creation and innovation. So, if we need to innovate, if you need to innovate for your company's survival, what does it take in order to truly build innovative solutions? Well, first of all, we need to get the best minds in our company in the area that's undergoing change, and the BAs need to facilitate those experts, a small but mighty group of experts, through analysis such as these in order to arrive at the most feasible, most innovative solution. And typically we don't spend enough time doing this before we invest in projects. What is ideal is that the results of all this analysis are captured in a business case to propose a new innovative business solution. Our companies globally kind of have a gap between developing really good strategy and investing in high value projects. There is, it's really R&D work that we are not doing adequately. We're not funding it. We're not spending enough time doing it. And so that's the BA's role of the future. That is the most important BA role, to make sure we understand the business problem, the opportunity, and to facilitate a group of experts to come up with a truly innovative solution. But then you haven't done anything yet, right? Maybe you've secured funding for the project, but then you need to develop this brand new, hopefully breakthrough solution and implement it well so that it adds value in society and customers of your organizations and wealth to your organization's bottom line. So obviously it takes more than these two roles in order to bring about innovation, but these are the two roles that most need changing. One in the way we come up with solution ideas, and the other in the way we execute in a complex world. So, if we need to innovate, if you need to foster innovation for your organization's survival, and virtually every business project is supported by information technology, how are we doing? What's our track record for projects? Well, it's really not very good. You may be aware of the Standish Group Chaos Report. They've been publishing this research since the early 90s. Used to be during that time frame that we had 15 or 16% of projects on time, on budget, with full scope. Now, since then, with improvements in project management, improvements in tools and technology, we've brought that up to 39%. But we can't seem to break through and bring our project success rate up, where it needs to be, 80, 90%. And we're only measuring time, cost, and scope. If we deliver on time, on cost, on scope, do we have a successful project? Project managers are judged by those. What if the solution did not add value to the organization? Then we've wasted all that time and budget and resources, right? So we're not even mature enough to measure the real, true value of a successful project. And so why is this? In my opinion, it's because we don't have the enterprise-focused strategic business analyst who is working in between the business practices of strategic planning and investments in change initiatives and projects. We have a gap in our business practices that we need to fill, we as business analysts. And then we don't have a full understanding of complexity and how to manage complexity in order to be more successful than 39% of the time, and to leverage complexity to bring about creativity. So here's what blew me away. As I do research about project performance, there is this, you need to Google, you need to look online and read some of the stuff that Roger Sessions has published about the IT project failure. And he's monetized it. He has estimated through algorithms that you can follow if you're a mathematician that the fact that we can only deliver 39% of IT projects successfully is costing us $500 billion a month globally. What's that? 6 trillion? And then he goes, it's $1 trillion a year in the U.S., and he says if we could just solve this, we could increase the gross domestic product of America by $1 trillion. You know, we can't afford to waste that $1 trillion. I don't know if you guys can afford to waste trillions of dollars, but I'm sure we can in America. So I guess this slide is a call to action that we can't do projects the same way anymore. We can't be satisfied with 39%. This is our profession, IT folks and BAs and project managers. We need to collaborate to do a much better job. So I hope I'm convincing you that we have to change the way we do projects, because 21st century projects are complex and they're just too big, too long, too inflexible. We're trying to use methods that are deficient in a constantly changing, complex world. We can't do things the same way. And now we have proof that our performance is simply not what we need to have it be. So we need to manage complexity to improve project performance so that these 3 areas are our measures of success. We should be at least 80, maybe 90% on time, on budget, on scope. We need to make sure we're innovating, and incremental improvements to business as usual is not going to keep us competitive in the 21st century. Whenever we have critical projects, we need to ensure that we're innovating. And the true value of project success is value to the customer and wealth to the bottom line of your organizations. And then maybe your bonus at the end of the year. We could measure that too if we wanted to. But this is where we have to change our project thinking to focus here. That will bring about a competitive advantage for your organization and make your career very successful. Okay, so in this complex world, we came up with a complexity model. This was in the book that Cedric spoke to you about. And PMI awarded the book their literature award of the year the book came out because it was taking project management thinking to the next level. So the framework we came up with was, first you have to be able to diagnose the complexity of your project. Then you need to make managerial decisions based on how complex your project is, about the leadership of the project, about the infrastructure you're building to control your project, whether it's linear project cycle or whether it's adaptive and flexible. And then you need to really look at the complexity dimensions that are present on your project and do something about them. Take some management action if you want to be more than 39% successful. So first we need to diagnose project complexity. We've developed a complexity model that consists of 9 complexity dimensions, and they are these. Typically, these are the areas that will impose complexity on your project that you need to understand and be able to manage. So we built the complexity model, taking those 9 dimensions into consideration. And we asked ourselves, what will those dimensions look like if you're working on a low complexity project, moderately complex, highly complex, or if you have a mega project that's implementing something brand new that's never been done before. Or you're doing something so big, like building the channel or something, that you need extreme measures in order to implement mega projects like that. And then from the model, we put together a tool. And it's a very, very simple tool, 1 page front and back, that has the 9 dimensions down the first column and the 4 complexity profiles, if you will, across column 2, 3, 4, and 5. And so we describe what a low complexity project would likely look like all the way up to the breakthrough innovation project. So this is a tool for you to use to diagnose the complexity of the project you're working on. And that'll give you the information you need to make important decisions about how you're going to manage your project. And a great technique is just to, once you've diagnosed your project, make it become visible. The presenter who was here right before me was talking about visualization. Make the complexity of your project visual. This particular example has several dimensions at the level 4 of complexity. And so that means that those areas are going to be very difficult to manage successfully. And so you need to take extra time, extra strategies and tactics in order to make that work. The easiest one to use as an example is the one in the upper right, the team composition. If you have teams of teams all around the globe, you have a very complex team management structure to communicate with your team, to ensure you have the right skills and resources, to make sure your teams are high performing, and because they're all over the world and working with different tools, likely in different cultures. So each one of these areas, if it's highly complex for your project, need your attention. So examples of complex business projects. We have them all over the place. Huge transformation projects. And these are all bring about their own complexities. So to understand complexity, when I looked at complexity science, just a little bit, not a whole lot, but I did do research on complexity science and learned that the opposite of complicated is simple. The opposite of complex is independent. So it's the interdependencies and interrelationships that cause the system within you're working, whether it's your project or the solution you're building or your organization, your company, or your country, Switzerland, all these changes impact your project in unpredictable ways. The individual I referenced earlier, Roger Sessions, he claims that IT projects are experiencing so many challenges because we are not architecting our systems to be simple, that is, to have a minimal amount of interdependencies and interrelationships within the features and functions of the system, and then the systems that we're building have many connections outside of the systems. Every one of those dependencies can cause the system you're building to behave differently than you might expect. That's when complexity comes into play. So the whole idea of managing complexity is to reduce the number of interdependencies within your system, within your project team, and within the outside of the system. So let's look at what kind of leadership do you need to manage complex projects. The old school traditional model of managing projects with the PM at the top, hierarchically configured does not work in a complex world. It does not work when you're on a complex project. You need to be much more adaptive, and you need collaborative, shared leadership, where individuals with different expertise come together to make the most important decisions and to determine what the complexities are and how we're going to manage them. The PM and the BA have great synergies together, assuming they are co-leaders of the project with the other key leaders from technology and the business. And PMs and BAs need to work together on a daily basis. If you don't have that relationship with your PM, I kind of say take them to lunch and start building a much more positive relationship. And so the project manager is accountable for project objectives, time, scope, and budget, right? But you as BAs are accountable for business benefits, that business value. And so those are the decisions you make need to be made based on both of those perspectives. Also, the BA thinks of projects differently than the PM does. So when you're talking and collaborating, your mental model is different. And so you need to exploit that and make sure that doesn't become a barrier. Your views of scope and the documents and artifacts you use to document scope are different. You and the PM need to make sure that all of these are aligned and working towards the same vision. Views of requirements. We focus on stakeholder and solution requirements. You need to focus on business requirements first, doing all those things in order to come up with the innovative, creative idea and document those in a business case, and then move down through to stakeholder and solution requirements. And then we also tend not to do transition requirements when we're deploying a new business solution. The BA needs to look very closely at what needs to change in the business operations, what kind of skills are needed, what kind of policies, procedures, business rules in order to be successful. You and the PM have different communication channels. The PM is talking with the project sponsor, and the project sponsor owns the area of the business that's undergoing change, and to make sure that change is successful. But you as BAs cannot bury yourselves in the project. You need to be focusing on the entire business domain, making sure that when we implement this new innovative solution, we're not going to destabilize the rest of the organization or the other information systems that our new system needs to slip into. And you need to focus on the gap we have in capabilities right now in PM and BA because of the complexity of projects continuing to rise. So this graphic shows you results of some research we did. The industries are across the bottom: financial insurance, financial services, IT, nonprofit, including government, healthcare, and transportation. The diamonds up at level 3, with the exception of one at level 2 of complexity, indicate the typical complexity of the projects in those industries. So the complexity level is at level 3, highly complex on our model, but the capabilities of PMs and BAs and other people working on the project are more at level 2 for moderately complex projects. Now, I have no reason to think that your organization, your project team is any different from this. And so that means when I give this presentation inside of corporations, this is the one the CIO wants to see the most. He goes, oh my goodness. No wonder we're experiencing challenged projects and outright failures, because we're trying to use methods and practices that aren't commensurate with the level of complexity on the projects. So that's going to cost you a lot of time and a lot of your additional budget to manage that gap when it comes up and causes difficulties in your project. So you need to first of all, acknowledge that we have this capability gap, and then sit down with your core team leaders, the PM, the technologist, the business, the visionary in the business who really understands the innovation you're trying to bring about, and say, what can we do about this? Do we need to recruit experts? Do we need to move some of the best thinkers in our organization in to help this project once a week to make sure that we have the expertise we need? Because right now, if we leave this capability gap, we're likely to only be 39% successful. Okay, so we've diagnosed project complexity, and we've discovered we all have really complex projects. How many of you just intuitively believe you're working on highly complex projects? I would have expected more. I'd love to have you use the tool, download it off the IIBA website, and diagnose the complexity of your project. And if you're not working on a complex project today, our projects are only going to get more and more complex as our world gets more and more complex. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is select the right project cycle, if you will. Some people call it the project infrastructure. It's what are you going to put in place to manage and provide governance over all these teams that are accountable to you for a piece of your solution. Well, if we're dealing with low complexity projects, our typical linear approaches are fine. Most people call that waterfall. And it starts with first a concept or an idea, requirements, design, construction, test, implement. Assuming that we can do those activities in phases, and we don't have to go back into the phases once we've finished with requirements and the customer signs off, we're good, and we're going to try to control changes, fiercely control changes. Well, that doesn't work in a complex, ever-changing world. But if you're working on low complexity, that works. If you're a home builder, a contractor, and you have a model that you've built 50 times and you're building number 51, you can put a pretty good schedule together, and you know the contractors you need, and you pretty well know the requirements because you're not allowing any changes. If you're working on a project like that, you know the business process, you know the system, you're making minor changes, then that's probably okay. But the more you move to the right in complexity, the more you need to be iterative and adaptive. So let's look at complex projects. Why are traditional approaches, linear waterfall approaches, not enough? Well, first of all, our projects aren't that way anymore. They're chaotic. They're unpredictable. We're working in uncertainty and ambiguity. And the methods that we use on small projects break down as the projects get longer and bigger. And so I'm not saying don't do the practices that you have in place now, either for BA or for PM, but I'm saying they're not enough. They need to be augmented to allow your team to adapt to changes or new learnings as the project goes on, because it's just simply going to happen. Things are going to happen that you were not able to predict because we're working in an uncertain, complex world. So I kind of love this slide. So think of your project team, okay, as a complex adaptive system. The most complex element of projects is the human element, because we can't predict human behavior. So think of your project team as a complex system that fluctuates between equilibrium, everything's stable, things are cool, to chaos. Oh my gosh, we're dysfunctional. We've had so many things happen that it's thrown us totally off. So equilibrium, think of ecosystems, think of that honeybee strain that isn't adapting to changes in the environment and is dying, and it's very important for our food chain. So if you stay in equilibrium, if you keep your project, we're going to build this, we're not accepting any changes, I don't want to hear about a new requirement or a change that might add value, then it's going to lead to paralysis and death, to chaos, if you have so much change and unpredicted events that your team is not functioning anymore. I often ask when I give this presentation in America if you could give me an example of a system or a group that is in chaos, dysfunctional, and without a doubt the answer is the Congress in America. And so they are in chaos. Their processes have broken down, and they're not changing them. Their world has changed, and they're not changing. They've just stopped, okay? But then here's the coolest thing. The most creative place to be is on the edge of chaos, because that's where you're experimenting, trying new things, reacting to change, adapting. And so you need to build a project infrastructure that at times in your project is on the edge of chaos. That's where creative ideas will emerge. That's where more ideas to change the solution that add value will emerge, and you need to be able to welcome the changes that add value and to reduce the cost of changes. And that's why adaptive systems are much more effective in today's project world than linear systems. Okay, they work because iteration is the best defense against complexity. Every time you iterate, you learn something, and you apply the learnings to the next iteration, or the next component, or the next release. And all we're doing is taking large batches of requirements, design, build, test, deploy, and making them smaller so they're manageable. And so we're limiting dependencies, which bring complexity. Huge benefits. Very difficult to implement in organizations that are used to the rigid, hierarchical, phased approach. So I'm not saying it's easy, but I'm saying if we're going to get better than 39%, we have to start implementing adaptive models. The challenges with adaptive models are these. So first, what you want to do as BAs is reduce or eliminate dependencies, because it's dependencies that bring about complexity. So what's happening is the line between design and requirements and design is becoming gray and almost non-existent. And the solution designer and the BA developing requirements are working together, and the requirements and the design are evolving and emerging, okay? And both the designer and you as BA are structuring your requirements and the design of the solution to limit dependencies. So what you're doing is you're first developing requirements for the core engine that's going to run your system, and then you focus on release 1 or module 1 with a one-way dependency from this release into the core. So if we need a change to the core, then you will need to see if it affected the other modules. But if we need a change to these modules or these components, we have a one-way dependency. We're not going to destabilize all the other modules because we've limited them and designed in simplicity. Roger Sessions says our IT systems are not designed for simplicity. They have too many interconnections within them and then outside of the system. So you can come in to really help design for simplicity if you work with the solution designer and make your requirements designed for simplicity. You don't want interdependencies among requirements for these either. It's way hard for you to manage. So that's the biggest thing. Then visualize. So the whole time you're doing this edge of chaos, creating, trying to come up with the most innovative solution, bring your developers in and have them prototype and make it visible so we all see the potential solution the same way. The minute you have to resort to text, and we do, for very specific kinds of requirements, then the text is subject to interpretation. If we can all see a picture, we all see it the same way. We need, as a profession, as a BA profession, to begin to embrace requirements management tools. They're out there. They're really good. They're integrated. They relieve you from the burden of keeping all your requirement models and documents and graphics and presentations in sync and up to date. And so imagine that. If you have a tool which prompts you as to what information you have to get from different stakeholders, and you put it in, and it forward engineers your process models and your use cases, then you can be free to be a much higher level business analyst. You don't have to keep all those artifacts up to date, accurate, and in sync with each other, consistent with each other. The tool will do that. If something changes in one place, the tool will make sure that same thing changes elsewhere. And then we need to work to break the thinking that we can do requirements up front and get them all. We can't. It's impossible. It never was very possible, but in a complex world, it's totally impossible. And so we need to continuously validate, evolve requirements as the solution emerges. So it's a trade-off analysis, back and forth kind of thing to optimize the solution, make it as simple as possible. 80%, research shows we only use about 20% of IT system features. We're building them much too complex and much too feature-rich. Okay, so models for managing complex projects are still emerging. We're doing all of these kinds of things. No one's doing agile or iterative waterfall exclusively. It's really a hybrid, is what people are finding is working. And then we're experimenting with some new practices, late design, intentionally not making design freeze or requirements freeze decisions until the last responsible moment, meaning we're going to miss the market window or we're going to miss the opportunity we're trying to seize, but we're not going to do it early because it doesn't work, especially not in a complex world. And built-in redundancy and experimentation. But there are challenges for doing it this way. Your culture is going to expect you to do it the other way and report you coming in and out of requirements phase and design phase and construction phase. But so you need to know how long you can keep your options open, right? And it's a lot of fun to experiment. And you see these really cool people in your organization up at the whiteboard challenging each other's ideas and combining ideas and coming up with real new innovative stuff. But you got to know at some point in time you got to say, okay, you guys, this is what we're going to build, and you need to start building something. So it's usually when your project sponsor isn't going to fund this R&D stuff any longer, and you need to, you need to stop it and move forward. You want to build in options to your solution to add flexibility, but you can't do that without a lot of costs. So you need to manage those costs. And then the biggest challenge is getting the right people in the room, the best thinkers in your organization. So you need to plan your creativity sessions well. You need to use sophisticated and fun facilitation techniques. You need to make it so people love to work with you because you're fun and you get things done, or you're not going to get the people you really need. So how much time do we have for questions?
Yeah,
15 minutes.
15 minutes?
Yes.
You mean I did it? Yay! So I have a few questions here that Cedric sent me that he wanted me to cover. But before we do that, let's open it up for comments or questions. So we have a good 15 minutes, so that's really cool. What do you think? Who's trying to do this already? Trying to be much more adaptive. Okay, what are your challenges? Talk to us. Tell us. How about you?
Consented working as agile coach, managing
Okay, do we have that mic? So people can hear? Yeah. Would you ask him to say that again? Say that again into the mic.
Sorry. Yes, I have experimented a lot of time your concept concerning complexity, project management, business analysis, and new innovation approach concerning requirements based on business case and feature-driven development, domain-driven development, a lot of new technology as system open architecture and so on, and really agility and lean practice are the only way to succeed in IT project.
So
this is my profile.
So you're doing it.
Yes, I'm working as a senior consultant as an agile coach and lean software developer.
Cool. Okay.
I'm fully convinced by your presentation and your argumentation.
Okay. Use it, right?
Yes.
Yes. Anybody
day.
who wants these slides, just send me an email. You've got it, so you can share it with your team. And also use the complexity model, the tool, to really understand the complexity of the current project you're on. And then take a step back and say to your core leadership team of your project, okay, what are we going to do about this to make our project more successful? Any other questions, comments? Who else is doing it and wants to share? Nobody?
Yeah, shy.
Okay. Well, let's go down through the questions that Cedric sent. He wanted me to be sure to cover, so what's the value of business analysis? And we're all trying to answer that question. We're all trying to be able to be very specific in our arguments for more mature business analysis practices in terms that executives will understand and want to support us. You know, to make changes, you need an investment. So we need to be able to sell business analysis. In my opinion, the answer to that question is twofold. Not just business analysis by itself, but first, bringing to your organization a small project mentality, a small project methodology, if you will, where you determine business goals at a very high level, a concept of the solution, and then a release plan where you'll have increment 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and reduce dependencies and simplify the architecture, goes along with benefits of business analysis, because we need to focus on the value of what we're delivering. So that very first increment that we deliver has to be seen as highly valuable. We have to predict the value versus the cost, and then we have to measure and demonstrate the value that actually was returned to your customers and the wealth to your bottom line. We're not doing that now because many projects don't even have a business case, which is the document where you predict the value that's going to be brought to your customers and to your organization through a new project solution. How many of you have a business case on your project right now that predicts that? Wonderful. How many of you that have a business case updated it down through your project as you learn more and things change? So right now, if we have one, we use it to get the project funded. And then we don't care about it anymore. That is the capstone document. That is the value your team is trying to achieve. If you don't, and then it's a BA's role to keep that at the forefront of every decision that your project team makes. And to update the business case if, as you move down through the project and you learn more and more complexities present themselves, the business case is likely to change dramatically. And the BA needs to make those changes. If we find that we're not going to be able to return the value that we thought originally, then the BA needs to get that expert team back in a room and say, okay, now we need a course correction here. What is it that we can do to truly bring about the value that the business is expecting. And so you may simplify the solution, you may select an entirely different solution, you may reduce the scope so you're focusing only on the high value pieces of the solution. Whatever it is, you need to do that, and it's the BA's role to do that. Once we start doing that, business case, keep it updated, change it, and recommend to the project sponsor and the business owner the changed course correction, and then measuring actual value. Because we're delivering value early, right? We're delivering in releases. So we can begin to measure value very early. Once we start doing that, it'll be clear the value of business analysis. Because you're documenting it, measuring it and documenting it, and sharing it with the world. Okay, the second question from Cedric was, what do you do when a project team is launched and the solution has already been decided on? How many of you have had that happen to you? What I would say is you got to go back and validate that's the most valuable, innovative, cost-effective, low-risk solution. And it probably isn't, because that kind of analysis probably wasn't done. So the first thing I would do as a BA is get a small expert team, really good thinkers in your organization, in the piece of your organization that's undergoing change, and make sure you understand the problem, the opportunity, identify all the different solutions that are out there, even the crazy ones that seem, that are just off the charts, then do a feasibility analysis for each option. Is it economically feasible? Is it feasible time-wise? We can get this solution to market in time. Is it culturally feasible? Will our organization be able to operate in a new business mode? Is it marketable? All the different aspects about the solution. And if you do that for each idea, all of a sudden the best solution will emerge. And it probably won't be the one that somebody thought of and formed a team and said, go make this or go buy this. Okay? And what about PMI? Are you all wondering about PMI? How many of you are aware that PMI has come out with a new certification for project, what's it called? Professional business analyst, I think, or analysis certification. So here's the deal. I'm on the board of IIBA. I've been involved with IIBA as a volunteer for several years before I came on the board. And we really struggled when PMI came to us, not wanting to collaborate, okay? Wanting to take over, right? And so we said, no, we can't let business analysis become a very small subset of project management. It's much bigger than that. So we have been spending the last year, the board and the staff, you may know we have a new CEO, we've been spending time re-looking at our core purpose, our vision, our core values. We've used the Jim Collins model, if any of you have used that and are familiar with that, in order to do that. Now we have another team, some of the same people from the board and the staff and practitioners, defining our business model. And one business model, I guess we've come up with 3 so far. One is to strike partnerships and collaborate with other associations whose core purpose and activity overlaps with business analysis. And that would be the architecture groups, the business process management groups, the business rules associations. And if we can, we always are having trouble defining business analysis for people and communicating about it and selling it. Well, if we were not so fragmented in all of these areas and had different people speaking about this little area of business analysis, we could bring a whole lot of value to corporations and businesses It'd be easier for us to talk, and we'd be bringing a full solution, not a partial solution. So that's one of our core goals in the next 10 years, to strike those partnerships and consolidate our industry. I mean, and it goes along with the presentation. Our industry is too complex. We have interdependencies among all of these different groups. We need to bring them together and simplify our going-to-market approach. So that's one of our goals. We're much more strategic than PMI's view of, they're looking at requirements management inside a project. We're looking at let's innovate and let's execute strategy and let's bring value to the organization. So our view is much cooler, I think. I think the BA role is the best role for the future, at least the next 10 years. I think it's the most fun. And if you're working at that level and really bringing value, you feel really good when you go home at night. You're not so tired. Okay. Any other questions or comments? Yes.
One example of complex project is the replacement of big system like ERP.
Yes.
That's typically something we, I think, cannot really cut in half like in small projects. How do you approach that?
Well, I've been in IT for a long time. And at one point, our silver bullet was going to be outsourcing all the development, no matter to whom, because IT was thought of as a cost. So we wanted to reduce the cost of developing IT systems. Then we decided, we had developed these systems independently, payroll system, purchasing system, inventory management systems, marketing systems. Then we decided we needed integrated enterprise systems. And we made a lot of companies very rich because we all bought their systems. And now we're pretty stuck with them. And we're stuck with what upgrades they decide they're going to put in, not really based on our business needs and our customers and our innovation approach. So we have anchored ourselves, and I think you're going to see the industry go away from that. Yeah, we'll keep those for back office stuff, just to run, finance and payroll, and we all need our paycheck, right? But we're going to really go away from that when we're working to truly innovate and truly change and transform and disrupt our business models. Does that answer your question?
On the principle, I agree. Now, there are some activities in a company that are mandatory for compliance reasons, or just because we need to produce something like invoices or whatever. I agree that's not innovation. However, whatever system we use, probably that we don't want to build something specific for that. I'm not thinking about building anything specific for an invoice system, for example, and that's why usually we have ERP. While I agree that on anything which is more innovative, we can put more effort. So when it comes to changing a kind of operational system to have the company producing invoices on everything, what's your recommendation? Because I feel that saying we want to produce invoices in an innovative way is wrong.
No, we're not advocating innovate in the way you produce invoices. That's standard process. We know how to do those. We're talking about innovating in how you go to market to your customers. Innovative products, innovative services. And so in those areas, I don't think the big enterprise systems are going to support us. We have to build the technology to support those new products. Most companies are now trying to reach their customers through the internet. That takes through social media. That's where we all are today. That's where the next generation is going to be. So it's that kind of innovation that we need technology to support. And that will differentiate us. How we do invoices won't differentiate us. Okay.
Last question.
Thank you.
Last question.
I want to come back on that. You'll see in the future that she's right. The ERP system will explode, probably, because you don't need an integrated system to get an invoice right. That's all. So some people will be smart enough to do it in a different way. Let's come back next year, and I'll show you examples. I've heard the word value again and again and again.
Yep.
I'll propose that there's a perspective missing in the BABOK that is value management. And I really would love to put that through. Maybe not in the V3, but maybe in the next steps.
And whether it's in the BABOK or not, it's your job to manage the business benefits that are expected from your project. That means you keep the business case alive. First of all, you have one, and your executive sponsor says, yes, this is the value that I'm expecting from you and your team. And then you constantly validate that, and then you measure it after the system is deployed, component by component. And then you go, here's the value our team brought to you. We deserve a great big bonus.
Je souhaite, voilà, merci de l'applaudir très chaleureusement.